A heavy cane hits the tile with a dry, final sound, and the whole room goes sharp as the crack of a drum. The cane is dark wood, carved with a tiny bird near the tip, and it sits on the floor like a sentinel, while a waiter freezes with a tray tilted, glasses trembling. The old man, Yaw Attah, stands steady in a blue jacket that has seen too many rains and too many sunrises. He smells of pepper and palm oil and the river wind. A man at the next table laughs loud enough to make the painted leaves on the wall sway. Yaw looks at the laughter, then at the cane, then at the swinging tray, and he makes a choice with his eyes. He takes the cane in one hand and does not move away. He is an osu, in a busy restaurant that glows with yellow bulbs and the clatter of plates. The place belongs to a man who wears slick shoes and a name tag that reads Kojo. Glass steam rises from bowls and spices hit the air like a slap. A young woman with bright nails is live streaming at a corner table. Her camera catches every face like a beetle in amber. When Yaw orders a bowl of light soup, she makes a sound like a coin falling, and the man who laughed whispers something about old men being full of stories and of dirt. The waiter brings Yaw his bowl with hands that shake because the other table is watching. Yaw smells the soup and feels the warmth, and still the room feels like a trap. He makes another small choice. He lifts his spoon and eats. The laughter grows sharper, a blade that cuts into the air. The man across from Yaw, his name is Ebo, dressed in a bright suit too small for his shoulders, calls out in a loud voice made for being heard by cameras, "Old men smell like yesterday's fish!" People turn like flowers toward the sun. The live stream camera clicks and pans close, making Yaw look larger and smaller at the same time. For a single breath it feels like the whole restaurant is leaning toward insult. Yaw's spoon hovers, his lips pressed together. He could leave with his cane clicking like a slow drumbeat, and nobody would blame him. Instead, he lifts the spoon to his mouth, and his face unmasks a quiet like an old river. He eats, slow and calm, and the sound of his chewing becomes a small, steady drum that fills the room. Tension becomes a rope that tightens. Kojo, the manager, steps forward with a voice like dry leaves. "Sir, we don't tolerate trouble here." His hand rests on the reservation book that looks like a small red heart. Ebo stands and points a finger that trembles with bravado. "This place is for those who pay and look good," he says. The live streamer gasps and titles the feed, "Old Man versus High Life." The viewers flood in with emojis. On the screen, the words scroll fast like rain. A young waiter, a Bena who sells oranges outside at noon and serves tables at night, watches Yaw with eyes that are a little wet. She remembers Yaw bringing a hot baobab drink to her when she had a fever months before. She feels a small pinprick of shame and a bruise of fear. Obstacle 1 comes when the security man, a broad fellow named Kwaku, puts a hand on Yaw's shoulder as if to steer him out. Yaw grips the cane and says nothing. The camera catches the callus of his knuckles. The room smells suddenly of citrus and hot oil and a fear that tastes metallic. Abena, inside the kitchen, slides a plate into a tray with trembling fingers and listens to Yaw's breathing like counting breaths. A gray-haired woman from another table pats Yaw's back, small and fast, like a sparrow. The manager's voice orders Yaw to leave for the comfort of other patrons. The word comfort falls heavy, like someone dropping a stone. The second obstacle is social proof. Two businessmen at a corner table nod at Kojo and say quietly, "He should go." They glance at the live stream phone and smile without their lips. At the bar, a woman in a red dress posts a short clip with the caption, "Aged and loud, just leave." The feed grows teeth that hunt. Yaw feels the weight of invisible opinions, of thumbs up and laughing faces he cannot touch. His spoon cools and the soup begins to puff small steam ghosts that vanish fast. He looks at the spoon, then at the cane, and he thinks of the river where he learned to read tides and names. The past presses in like a tide. A third obstacle arrives like thunder. Kojo calls the police. The uniformed men move like heavy puppets with radios blinking red. The camera lenses spin and the click of the live stream doubles the sound of sirens waiting to be drawn. Ibo stands proudly like a man on a small hill. He barks orders that make fingers point. Get him out. He is making customers uncomfortable. Yaw's smile is a small, pale light, but history has made him careful. He lifts his spoon again and eats as though the world outside his mouth could not touch him. The police check his pockets like they are late farmers searching for seeds. They find the cane, a small packet of herbs, a bus token, and a photo folded twice. They look at the photo and shrug. One officer hides his face when he laughs. While all this chaos spins, a pair of hands fit into the scene like two new actors taking the stage. A black SUV glides up outside with the soft confidence of money. It stops like a shadow. Its windows are dark like wet pavement. Out steps Nana Kwame Mensah, a man whose name people use like a key and a warning. He wears a long coat that flutters and shoes that shine like a river stone. He carries a small wooden box in his hand and a face worn by long nights and good choices. Inside, too, he restaurant. The cameras tilt toward his arrival. He pauses at the doorway and breathes the air like a man remembering a song. Nana Kwame is known across Accra for buildings that rise like palms and for giving away roofs to those who have none. He is also known quietly for leaving the city early and returning late, like a river that sometimes disappears. He sees Yaw sitting with his spoon and his cane, and the photo folded twice. He sees the laughers and the live stream glow. He chooses a path like a man choosing a bridge. He crosses the tiled floor with steps that do not make noise and stops near the table that bristles with eyes. He lays his hand on the cane as though it recognizes him. The first thing Nana Kwame does is absurd and small. He wants to know the bird carved on the cane. He lifts it and reads the grooves slowly, like a man reading the rings of a tree. He knows the pattern. He says to no one and to everyone, "This is not a cane, it is a witness." The live streamer laughs and leans forward. Kojo studies the face of a man who is larger in the room than his title. Yaw looks up, and their eyes meet like two old boats at sea. There is a wordless recognition that moves between them like warm water. But Nana Kwame does not speak harshly. He asks the room for patience and then asks the live streamer Aisha Boteng a simple question. "Who is the owner of this table?" She blinks. Her camera breathes, waiting for drama. She says it is hers and that she paid for it, and she brags about her followers. Nana Kwame smiles and invites her to step outside for a few minutes. The camera goes with her like a moth. Outside, he opens the small wooden box he brought. From it, he takes an old, yellowed envelope and a faded letter. He does not shout. He unfolds the paper with hands that know how to hold the past. The letter inside is brittle and smells of church smoke. It has the neat script of a hand that once moved with authority. It is a promise dated 20 years ago, bearing the seal of a small school by the sea. The ink lists a name, Yaw Attah. It says, "The holder of this cane is a custodian of a story, a teacher, a man who saved names." Nana Kwame reads the words aloud, and the restaurant grows suddenly like a place in which everyone listens to a sermon. The live streamer's camera shakes, her viewers spike. Yaw's shoulders loosen as if someone releases a strap. His eyes become a harbor. Midpoint twist. Nana Kwame stands and tells the room a story that knocks the scale from the day. He says that 25 years earlier, in a storm that swallowed 2 buses and 18 souls, Yaw Attah pulled a small boy from the water and carried him to a beach where the moon looked like a coin. That boy is Nana Kwame. He speaks in a voice that drops stones into a quiet pond. The restaurant fills with the sound of a spoon dropping into a bowl and not breaking. Ibo's laughter dies in his throat. The live stream explodes into comments, shock, then doubt, then the slow tilt toward awe. People begin to understand the layers they cannot see. Yaw as rescuer, Yaw as teacher, Yaw as older brother to a man who learned how to build hospitals and bridges. The twist flips the meaning of the entire fight. The insult no longer seems small. It is a shape of cruelty that must now answer to the scale of gratitude. Yet the room does not change right away. Kojo's hand is a fist. Ibo's face flushes with the color of regret trying to hide. The police exchange looks like two men deciding which road to take. Abena wipes her hands on a cloth and goes to Yaw's side like a young rabbit that finds courage. Nana Kwame lifts his hand and places a palm on Yaw's shoulder like a flag. He says slowly, "He taught me my first compass. He taught me to count bread and to count names. I have more to give him than the price of a bowl." Obstacle 4 is stubborn and loud. Ibo refuses to apologize. His pride is a small hot coal in his chest. He stands and tries to turn the story into a marketing piece talking about class and expectations. The live streamer, now outside with Nana Kwame, records his talk and asks for reactions, playing both sides like teaspoons. Inside, Kojo calls a private company lawyer on his phone, and the voice that answers the lawyer speaks like a man who smells gold at the end of the day. The argument becomes technical. Rules, policy, safety. The room feels like a courtroom with no lawyer for the old man. Nana Kwame, who has more money than the entire neighborhood, chooses not to buy the restaurant or to pay off its fines. He does something that looks smaller but stings in a way money cannot hush. He asks Yaw in the middle of the restaurant to tell the story of the night the storm took the buses. Yaw's voice is a small drum that taps on the ribs of the people listening. He tells them about the water that tasted like iron, about small hands and wet cloth, about the boy who was coughing and blue, about how he wrapped the boy in his own jacket and called a name into the dark. He says the boy's name was Kwame, but he does not say whether he knew he would grow into a man who would one day be Nana Kwame. The room listens, like a woman listens to the first cry of her child. Obstacle 5, the hardest, is not in the restaurant, but in the hearts of the people. The live stream has pinned a comment that reads, "Old men are trouble." It spreads like foam. Even those who hear Yaw's story feel the itch of their own fear and smallness. The businessman at the corner keeps his eyes away. He is afraid to be seen wrong. Kojo keeps whispering to his staff, a man whose mind is a ledger and who worries about ratings and inspections. The police shuffle papers and pick the option that costs the least, to escort Yaw out officially, to close the incident, and to keep the peace like a bandage. Nana Kwame stops them. He lays his palm on the ledger and says, "We will not let this close like a wound without tending." At the midpoint shift, the camera outside shifts to show Nana Kwame's name trending. A chorus rises online demanding apology. Yaw is offered a seat of honor at the manager's table. He declines with a smile, asking only for water and quiet. Nana Kwame offers to pay for the night's bills and to host a small gathering elsewhere, to bring the city to attention. But Ibo posts a story. Old man causing scene to get attention, and an army of thumbs down reigns. Battle becomes public. Nana Kwame's wealth makes the fight larger, and that draws more feet. His choice to stand is now a banner that invites enemies. The crisis arrives like the snap of winter. Yaw goes outside for air, and the bright light hits him like a slap. He starts to cough and then crumples like a cloth thrown on the floor. The ambulance wails like a hyena crying. Nana Kwame catches him and notices his breath is shallow, skin like paper. The doctors say it is a stroke. The hospital smells like bleach and fear. Yaw lies in a bed under a green blanket, and cannot hold his cane. Nanakwame sits beside him with his long coat draped awkwardly like a small tent. He holds Yaw's hand and finds the small photograph slipped into the old man's pocket, a picture of a school with many children and a teacher holding a chalkboard. The doctors say Yaw will lose words, names that live on the tip of a tongue. This is the painful loss. The city knows Yaw as a certain voice now, but he cannot speak. He opens his eyes, and a small tear makes a path down his cheek. Abena stands at the foot of the bed and touches the sheet. Her fingers taste like orange peel. She decides to sit every day and read to him. The room of friends that Nanakwame gathers is small but wide. Neighborhood women with pots, a pastor who sings thin hymns, and a boy from the market who used to carry Yaw's bag. Nanakwame must choose how far to take the fight. He can harness money to buy silence for Yaw, to hide his illness and pay for private care, or he can use his name and his public power to make the fight about more than this one man. The decision stings like a choice between two wounds. Nanakwame chooses the larger wound. He organizes a public hearing at the old market square where wooden stalls smell of cassava and leather. The hearing is a spectacle. Live cameras, banners, people standing on benches, and men with microphones. The restaurant is summoned. Kojo arrives with a lawyer and a briefcase that looks like a nest of small snakes. Ebo comes wearing the same suit, his arrogance like a trophy that does not match the day. The city official who handles consumer rights comes too, slick and with a clipboard heavy with the city's rules. The square is loud enough to make the air tremble. The multi-climax begins. First, Nanakwame speaks in a voice that carries like thunder. He tells the crowd about the night on the river and about the man who kept names. He shows Yaw's photo and the letter, and holds up the carved cane like a judge shows a talisman. Cameras swing toward the cane, and the crowd gasps. The live streamer who once mocked now hangs her head. Then Abena steps forward as an unexpected witness. She tells the square about the hot baobab drink, about the night she was sick, about how Yaw did not only rescue a child in the sea, but had offered kindness to small strangers in the city. Her voice breaks and the crowd goes quiet. The city official checks his watch as if it no longer belongs on his hand. During the public reveal, the lawyer for the restaurant tries to talk about policies and the comfort of paying guests. His words sound like the rustle of dry leaves. Nanakwame exposes a ledger, thick with unpaid taxes and a string of complaints about the restaurant's treatment of poor people. He has not only the heart of a man, but records in his hand, dozens of small filed grievances, receipts that show poor service, evidence that Kojo's restaurant has been called out before for small cruelties. He does not shout. He lays the papers on a small table like a net. The crowd sees the facts flutter like the wings of trapped birds. Ebo, exposed, tries to play the victim and shouts that his words were a joke. The live streamer apologizes with hands shaking as if she is cold. Yet repentance looks thin against the weight of the ledger. The city official gestures like a man who must not be seen to be wrong twice and announces penalties, large fines, a temporary closure of the restaurant, and a public statement that the city will train hospitality workers to treat elders with dignity. Kojo's face drops like a mask. The lawyer looks at Nanakwame with a new light in his eyes, the kind of light one uses to measure knives. The restaurant's badges of status fall like leaves. People begin to clap, slow and hesitant, then louder. Unexpected witness, too, comes in the form of a teenage boy named Kofi, who sells newspapers by the square. He produces a small video on an old phone, footage of Kojo's staff turning away an older woman during a rainy afternoon last year when her bag burst and her money flew like stunned birds. The video shows staff placing chairs against doors and ignoring wet hands. The footage makes the case bigger than Yaw. The city official, who feared bad press, now must act. He declares the restaurant suspended and announces a city program that will send ambassadors to teach respect and to gather stories from elders in every neighborhood. The crowd roars like a surf. Ebo's power strips away in front of everyone. Sponsors pull their ads from his channels. The live streamer loses followers as old photos of her mocking the poor surface. Kojo hands his resignation to the city and the restaurant closes its shutters for a month. Nana Kwame arranges for Yaw to be moved to a care center and for a team of speech therapists to visit. He creates a small fund for other elders in the city who need care after such public shaming. The spectacle is public and bright, but it leaves a bruise. Yaw's hands shake, and Nana Kwame holds the cane between them as if it is a bench that both rest upon. At the heart of the multi-climax there is a scene of tenderness that feels like a quiet, saved from a flood. Abena sits with Yaw and reads aloud all the names he kept, the lost ones, the children, the women, a teacher named Mama Amina, a fisherman named Dlamini. Yaw cannot answer, but he mouths names as if tasting them like sweet mango. Tears make tracks on Nana Kwame's cheeks. He remembers his own small hands gripping Yaw's jacket that Neat gayed on the river, and now his money and his name feel like a poor attempt to return a favor that was given without asking. The crisis resolves into action. The city starts the Elder Respect program. The restaurant reopens after months with new staff training and a quiet sign that reads, "Respect is part of our menu." Kojo hands a check to a small city fund and apologizes on live television, his voice small and honest. Ebo disappears from channels for a while. The live streamer starts a new series about small acts of kindness, and she visits Yaw, who smiles in ways his mouth cannot always make. Nana Kwame builds a small health center for elders in the neighborhood and names it after a name Yaw says in his sleep sometimes, the name of a village across rivers. He hires Abena to manage a small outreach program to feed the elders and to teach young servers to respect all customers. The resolution is not a simple cleanup. It is a slow turning of a wheel. People argue and then come together. The city official, who once prized calm, now sits in a hall listening to stories. The small fund Nana Kwame creates is used to fix roofs, to deliver bread, and to collect more stories from those who move through life carrying names on their backs. Yaw improves slowly. Speech comes back in small, bright pearls. He learns to say thank you again, and then water, and then names that were once locked in a chest. His cane remains a witness, polished and stored under his pillow. 6 months later, the scene is different in tone and in light. The market square hosts a small festival for elders. Stalls sell jollof rice and sugarcane, and children run with ribbons. Yaw sits on a simple chair on a small stage, his cane leaning against a basket of flowers. Nana Kwame stands beside him like a bridge, no longer a shadow of riches, but a man who returns favors in a way that is honest and loud. The restaurant in Osu has new paint and a sign that shows an old man and a young server shaking hands. The doors open to everyone. He and the staff wear pins that read, "Respect." Abena runs a small training class and she teaches with the same gentle energy she gave to Yaw when he was sick. A small child asks Yaw how he remembers so many names. He laughs in a sound like falling rain and says, "Names keep people together." He lifts his cane and taps it on the stage, a sound that answers the early crack of wood on tile. It echoes like a bell. Nana Kwame releases a small booklet called The Names We Keep, a collection of stories from elders across Accra. In the booklet, Yaw writes a line with a steady hand. "Respect is a river that needs tending." Young servers read it and nod as if the line is a map. In the end, the city learns to weigh people with more than money. The public spectacle becomes a lesson that the cameras cannot forget. Ebo goes on a long silence and appears later in a local shop, working and listening. Kojo begins to volunteer at a soup kitchen, his hands finding a rhythm. The live streamer turns her channel into a place where people find small acts of honor. She apologizes often and sincerely on film, and the viewers return slowly. The city pavilion, once empty, fills with elders telling stories, and young people come to listen like they are learning to read for the first time. The last image before the final paragraph is simple. Yaw sitting by a river that tilts gold at sunset, his cane resting against his knee like a guard. Nana Kwame sits close and hums a tune that sounds like the city. Children chase a stray dog. The cane's bird carving shines because the sun hits it clean. The river answers, soft as a vow. People pass and lift their heads a touch more than before. The change is not perfect, but it is a turn toward better. The camera pulls back until the scene is small and then holds, showing how a single act of cruelty became an entire relearning of how to be together. Moral: respect costs nothing and changes everything. Was justice done, yes or no? If this moved you, please like, subscribe, and share with a friend who cares about kindness. Tell your story in the comments below. The interval opens like a curtain drawn halfway, and the city's morning slides back into the square with a softer light. The river of yesterday's thunder recedes and leaves behind a bank of quiet, where the gossip and the glances have weight but no edge, and in that pause the picture shifts to reveal the work that will follow the talk. Yaw, still pale from the stroke but seated with a nurse's careful hands steadying him, gazes toward the makeshift stage that Nana Kwame has set up near the old cassava stalls, and for a heartbeat, his mouth trembles as if the old river is trying to speak again through a cracked dam. Then a new voice threads through the crowd, quiet at first, a man in a velvet suit whose shoes catch the light like river stones, and he calls himself by a name the town knows but never fully trusts. A philanthropist who has watched the city's frailties through a dozen glass towers and has learned to pretend nothing hurts. And he does not take the center. He steps to the edge, letting Nana Kwame stand tall with the cane between them like a border to be crossed. The interval beat was not a dissolution, but a tuning. The city had listened long enough to hear a new instrument in the orchestra, and it is ready to play. The twist lands as if a new tide has risen from the sea that Yaw learned to navigate long ago. The hidden billionaire, the benevolent witness, the quiet partner in the light that now bathes the Elder Center and the market square alike, reveals himself not with boast, but with a simple pen stroke on a charter that makes the Elder Respect program permanent and expands it to cover every neighborhood, every church hall, every schoolyard where child might learn to count names as if they were bread. He does not boast of wealth. His voice, when he speaks, has the cadence of a farmer who knows the value of rain, but not the vanity of a storm. Wealth is a river, he says, and its banks are the people who guard it. The crowd hushes as if a fence has been lowered, and Yaw leans a little toward the speaker, the cane resting across his knee like a flag laid down for peace. Interval's battery of cameras lurches, then steadies, as if the lenses themselves feel the weight of consequence and choose to see clearly for once. Isha, the live streamer, catches not just a scandal, but a moment when a city is forced to remember that money is a tool and dignity is the hammer that shapes it. Her eyes wobble between awe and fear, as if she has stepped from a world of quick cuts into a slow, inevitable truth. Midway, the turning point lands with the quiet thunder of a thundercloud thinning. The wealth behind the reforms is not a single name, but a conquered. Nana Kwame's own resources braided with this other patron's, a structure built on the old city's own need to be seen as worthy of care. Nana Kwame turns from the crowd to Yaw and speaks to him as a city speaks to its oldest tree, a language of roots and rings, not of lines on a ledger. Tells the room a small truth that changes everything. The letter Nana Kwame produced, the storm memory photograph, the ledger of small cruelties, These are not weapons to win a fight, but memos to begin a stewardship. He places the cane in Yaw's hands again, gently, as if the bird-carved sentinel has earned its right to witness not only a history, but a future. And the old man, with the last of his strength gathering into a soft, measured breath, whispers a name that makes the square lean closer. Not Kwame, not Yaw alone, but the words that have drifted through generations. Names that have kept people together. The whistle of the city official's whistle of fate cannot be ignored, and yet it is softened by something rarer. A public apology that looks like rain after a day of heat, a contrition that does not pretend to erase harm, but promises repair. Kojo, who stood with his mouth open and his ledger ready to close the door on the poor, finds his voice again, and it falters into something that means he has learned to measure the breath of another man before offering his own. Kojo's bravado evaporates under the glare of the new ledger, and his pride, so loud in the restaurant, shrinks to a whisper that the crowd no longer tolerates. The city's eyes move from the stage to the street, from the prophecy of a single night to a routine of weeks and months, where every youngster who sells oranges or a grandmother who crosses the square with a basket can hear a voice that says their name matters. There is reward here, but not the kind that lands as a check in a bank account. The reward is a new nerve in the city's spine, a stronger will to stand up and tell the truth even when it costs something. The interval also reveals a quiet alliance. Abena, the orange seller turned server who carried Yaw's memory when he could not name a single thing, steps forward with a tray of cold water and a smile that does not pretend the pain is gone, but promises it will be honored in every act of care that follows. She speaks softly at first, then with more confidence, about the hot baobab drink that once warmed a fever, and the many late nights she stayed by Yaw's bed, counting breaths as if they were beads in a necklace of names. Her voice, simple and unhurried, becomes a bridge between the old man's past and the city's future, a bridge over which the children cross every day to reach the market, the school, the clinic. And then a new image, the old hospital wing that Nana Kwame never forgot, now a planned doctor, on in fresh ink. The Yaw Attah wing of names, where each patient receives a little card with a name carved into it and a story that someone vows to listen to recite, to keep. The crowd claps with a tenderness that feels like rain after a drought, and the camera lingers on Yaw's mouth, which trembles with a smile that lives at the edge of speech, as if the words are a canoe waiting at the riverbank for the right wave. Yet the interval's most forceful hook lands in a corner, where a small boy with a notebook and a pencil steps up to the edge of the stage and reads aloud a line from the elder booklet. "Names we keep," he says, and the audience leans closer to hear him say, "We keep them because to forget is to lose a map to our own hearts." The boy's page-turning voice is a trumpet that clarifies a murky memory. There is more to the story of Yaw and Kwame than a rescue and a reputational healing. There is a lineage of care that travels across rivers and neighborhoods, across nights when the city forgot to listen, and days when it refused to forget. The interval thus marks a new chapter, not a closing, because the last 2 pages of the booklet must still be written in the glow of a rooftop projector when the market square is quiet enough to hear a whisper and loud enough to admit a miracle. The interval's final beat arrives with the younger Kwame stepping forward, not as the famous philanthropist, but as a steward who knows his power comes from the memory of a river and the lesson of a cane. That wealth is a river, yes, but the current is kept strong by the hands that hold it up. The interval breathes a last time, and then the frame stops on Yaw's hand, still and sure around the bird-carved sentinel, and then slides to the platform where the Elder Center's doors swing open for the first time with a gentle creak that sounds like a welcome to every passerby, and the last note of the interval clicks into place with a light that says, "Justice is not a moment but a movement, And this movement has a name, and its names are spoken aloud again and again until the city remembers what it means to be kind, until the river's song answers with a flood of small, brave acts.